starting. So, right, let's get started. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming to my book launch. I'm really delighted to see you all here. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, past, present and emerging, including any people we have with us today, as well as for this listeners, because I know we're talking to people from around the world. I recognise that the sovereignty of the land that I'm on was never ceded and that it remains Aboriginal land. I'm speaking to you all today from Darumble country in central Queensland, Australia. And I know we've already started this in a conversation before as everyone was coming in, but I think it'd be really lovely using the chat function for people to share the country you're on if you're in Australia, or the First Nations land if you're in other places in the world, or the place you're living and situated. So we can have that in the chat and we can have a good idea of maybe even the time of day as well. It's quite wonderful to think of us all together at the same moment, but in different times and different places. And then I'm going to pass on to Tatiana to share the next part of our presentation.
Yes, and thank you, Alys, for organizing all these, and welcome to this book presentation. I would like to tell the story of in which way this book came to life, and it did because of this human encounter and our connection, personal connection. I met Alys in 2017 at the ICQI in the States, and it was actually one of the precious informal meetings at conferences. We were sitting on the lawn for the grill, the barbecue, and at the conference. And Alys and Davina had just had a wonderful, striking, provoking presentation, and I thought he was hilarious what they were talking about, and inspiring and fun. And we kept in touch, and we met again in the ECQI in Edinburgh, where one of the sessions was about becoming an animal. I think that was the gorilla session, and in 2018 I was working on a launch of this book series with my co-editors Anu Mitra and Chungfang Zhu. And what we wanted really to do was to extend the idea and ideas about creativity to a plural and pluralistic way of thinking creativity as creativities and art as arts. And we really wanted to extend the stories to places that are not covered by the white thinking about creativity as something that is producing growth and economic growth, and something that we have to exploit. And in these informal conversations, Alys told me about her PhD study, and I thought it was amazing. And when Alys was ready, I actually encouraged her to turn her PhD study into a book, because we had this book series that was ready for this kind of work, and my interest actually was a matter of passion and falling in love, because every single word of this title that she pitched to the book series was inspiring in itself, searching for the ideal school around the world. Searching, the learning as inquiry, and the ideal school. What does she mean? Do we really believe in ideal schools? Is it something that really exists? And then around the world, this was exactly what we wanted to extend in our book series. And then this, she went on with this title, The School Tourism and Performative-Autoethnographic-We. What is the school tourism? And she was telling the stories of the van, this mythical material object that is moving through the world, and the performative-autoethnographic-We that I loved, and brought me back to Tami's workshop at the ICQI where and when we met. So everything about just the title was enough for me, and every time I look at the book, I find something that really makes me jump from the chair, and when I find myself talking about the book and suggesting it to colleagues and friends, one of the things I always say, Alys, is you must read this. It's like a novel. It reads like a novel, and this was the quality that I really enjoyed reading and rereading the book once it was fully finished and really crafted and carved. That is engaging as if it was a novel, but still with all the academic craft behind and serious academic work. And one of the first sentences, actually the first sentence that you talk about is, it's more important now than ever to be reminded of the joys from simple things in life, like love and connection. And I think this book is also the product of this love and connection between two human beings that really encounter and in shared ideas and ideals. So having said that, that's a little the background story of this making of the book, and Alys has been really passionate about really carrying out these projects. So I look forward to hear your experiences as readers of the book.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think what we might do now is introduce the people that we have got on our panel for the discussion, and also just have a wider welcome to everyone who's coming into the book launch today. Sorry if you had any issues coming in, you're here now and you're very welcome. So what the people we've invited are, we've got Tami Spry here, and we've got Michael Kamen here as well, and we were meant to have Jane Speedy, but sadly Jane is not well, and so she's not with us this evening, but she has sent me some thoughts which I'm going to share with you as well. And also we've got lots of people in the audience here that made this book happen. There's my PhD supervisor, Max Hope, is here. So hello, Max, thank you for being here. My parents are here, my sister is here, so thank you very much for being part of this. Emma Hughes is here, who was very great help with the Montessori section. One of my dearest old friends is here. We've got Susan here as well from school. We've known each other a very, very long time, and Emma, from my own so they've come into the stories even in the background. They will relate to some of those personal school stories. And Paul Magnusson is here also from my work with the Ideal School project at Lausanne American School in Switzerland. So, but I'm just going to say a little bit about why it's really important for me to be on this panel with Tami and Michael and with Jane. When I was doing my PhD, I wasn't really sure where I was going to pull it all together, how I was going to pull it all together. And I found out about autoethnography. And I read a book of Tami's in a hammock in Italy called Paper Page Stage. And reading this book transformed my thinking about the performative. And I got in touch with Tami and I got in touch with Carolyn Ellis, and I got myself over to America in that May to the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry. And I got told I would find home, and I did. And I found home in this collection of scholars who think differently, and it's okay to stand up and sing, it's okay to perform and be yourself as well as being a researcher. And within that space, I was able to find my international community, but I also found my British community. That was what's so funny, is I met Davina there, and then I came in touch with the Collaborative Inquiry Network and Jane Speedy, and my thinking and my position of who I was as this new researcher changed. I realized I didn't need to fight as much because I had other people who were fighting with me. So I could enjoy their company and have lots of fun. So I met Tami at ICQI. I saw Tami's work. I was very inspired by the performative and how the performing body was so important, not just the written body, but the body being in space, and how we moved and how we interacted. And that was so exciting. And it was also, I came back realizing I could write differently. At the same time, I was getting to know Jane and through the Collaborative Inquiry, and I gave a presentation to AniNet, which is now CaniNet in Bristol, about my ongoing research. And Jane stood up afterwards and said, and it's in the book, I was talking about the ideal school, and Jane said, that's an oxymoron. You can't have an ideal school. And I was thinking, oh yeah, okay. And although that threw up all my research, because I was searching for this ideal school, and I did visit over 180 places in 23 countries on this massive journey of searching, I realized that what I was looking for was different. I wasn't actually looking for this gem at the end. I was finding things along the way. And I think that links back to what Tatiana was saying about this ing. Yeah. It was a journeying. I was journeying and searching and performing and being in that space as I was moving along. And I had these people to inspire me. I had Tami, I had Jane, and also as Tami's work was exploring the autoethnographic-We, I realized that it's not just the singular Alys that's talking. There are multiplicities of Alys. And the people who saw me at the beginning, I wrote my PhD as Alys, the future parent. Well, now I'm Alys of an almost 3-year-old. Or Alys, the pregnant gorilla, is now, it's a very different person to who I am now. But those different hats and different aspects, I think, added to this multiplicity of the Alys-We. And Jane's work was influencing that as well. So alongside all this, I was still searching for schools. And in terms of pedagogy and thinking differently about being in the classroom, I was so happy to meet Michael in 2017, because I met somebody who was also passionate about change. But what Michael was doing it with students, with pre-service teachers, with undergraduate students, and getting people to think differently at that level. And that was so exciting, because when I joined him in New York for that week in 2017, and we visited so many different innovative schools, I was part of a group of people. It was a team. We were going into these schools, and when I go in on my own, it's so different, because there's lots of one-to-one chats. You can almost disappear into the classroom, it's just one. But when you're coming in a group, it's a different presence. You're taking up more space, more time, and potentially it's a different interaction within the school. But at the same time, you've got people to talk to you. I mean, you'll have noticed for people who've read through the book that I at times became a bit too negative. people are saying, Alys, why are you so negative? Stop critiquing all the time. And that's so helpful to be with other people because they can call you out and say, hey, but that was awesome. And you can go, okay, let's stop and breathe and look at it differently and learn from other people. And I think that was just such a helpful experience. So we have Michael here. And then back to Tatiana, it was very exciting on this journey to meet people who have a lot more experience, again, as everyone else are on the panel, but also to become friends with these people as well and realize you've got lots of things you can do with each other and help each other, but also help scholarship and help thinking differently. And this event and this book isn't just for academics or for pre-service teachers. We hope it's helpful for parents and for young people as well, just to think differently about the society we live in. And if my hope, I think that's what I'm really saying in this book, is the more experiences of looking at the world differently, then we can be part of that change. I'd love to now just to pass on to Tami to just hear something about your connections to all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alys, and hello to everyone. It's so nice to be here with everyone. Tatiana, when you're talking about ICQI, it's making my heart continue to break because we're not there face to face with one another, but we will be next year, I'm sure. But this is wonderful to see everyone, and it's so nice to see the people who have been part of this project with Alys as well. I'm going to speak only very briefly because I think we're far more interested in hearing how people work with the book, what the book has done with them, what the book has done for them. And I wanted to start out by reading a poem in the book from Alys, and then I'm just going to have just a couple of remarks after that to talk about performative autoethnography. This is on page 73 in the last week of February 2016. Alys says, this poem covers my experience and how that visit became a nodal point of my research. She visited the Green School. The heat hangs heavy, creating a wall around me, coating me in lethargy, and I am meant to be in a school of wall-lessness. Sweat drips, monsoon rains flow, rich greens of the paddy fields, wild dogs running by, so much going on in this strange cocoon. And why am I suffocating in this beauty? We laugh in the icy pool and put the world to rights, even discussing Deleuze in the darkness. And then we are rushed on to the next episode to eat more food. The food is delicious, but why am I feeling like Hansel, fattened to distract me? What is really going on here? I love that piece from Alys's book. For me, it really encapsulates the strength of this book. Performative autoethnography is meant to open up the research field and the research experience to all different kinds of critical, creative inquiry, to rigorous, creative, and critical inquiry, because creative and the critical are hand in hand. To be creative, of course, means that you're looking at something and you want to work with it, maybe change it, maybe enhance it. And that is immediately a critical enterprise. That's what I really like particularly about this poem. Alys clearly and through her body creates the scene for us, but she's critiquing it as well. And good autoethnography is about continuing to remain accountable to our research ideas, remain accountable to the ways in which we're engaging research. And for me, that's what Alys's book does. She uses dialogue, she uses poetry, vignettes. Her multiple Alyses are absolutely wonderful. A van dweller, a PhD student, a mom, and bad Alys. She opens up the category of research, and she surely, for me, opened up the methodology of what performative autoethnography can do. And constantly, she's asking us to think and rethink our own ideas about education, about who we are in education, what we want it to be, and that's what good critical creative work should do. I had such a wonderful time reading this book. I still look at different parts of this book, and I can't applaud Alys enough in terms of the work that she has done and the contribution that she's made to so many fields.
Thank you, Tami.
I'm very interested to hear now how other people have entered the book.
Well, I think as let's move to Michael next, and then I'll just share. Jane wanted to share an image with everybody, and then we'll bring to everyone's back in response to that. So over to Michael. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you, Alys, for inviting us to be here. This is a wonderful, wonderful chance to be with people from around the world. Tatiana talked about meeting Alys in a human interaction. I actually met Alys at a conference in Plymouth when I was able to take a couple of weeks in the UK and Ireland on my sabbatical in 2017 at a conference called Privileging the Unspoken in Arts and Communities in a Postmodern, Post-Human World. So when I heard you say you had a human interaction with her, I thought of the name of the conference. So, well, I had a post-human interaction with her. But it almost felt that way because it's just totally circumstances that brought us together. It was in March, right around my birthday. I was visiting a colleague at the University of Plymouth to visit a school and some other schools in the UK. And they happened to be hosting this conference that day. And Rod up, I looked at the brochure and saw somebody searching for the ideal school and mentioned Deleuze and rhizomes. And I thought, that's the session for me. So I popped in, and all of a sudden Alys was talking about this wonderful work. She was still collecting her experience of visiting schools. And I had already planned a small course in New York. I live in Texas, but I was taking a few students to New York in May to visit innovative schools as a May term class. And we just started talking. And I said, if you're still looking for more schools, join us in New York. And to my amazement, she did. And as things seemed to go with Alys, the rhizomatic node was sprouting, and she happened to have another conference the week after we were going to work in the States. So things just sort of fell into place. And we had an amazing time together visiting schools with 3 of my students. I teach an innovative school course on campus sometimes using local schools as well as in New York, and I'm hoping to do one in the UK next summer after next if I get final approval from the university. But I'm delighted that I have a textbook for that course now. It's going to be wonderful to share chapters and different pieces of this book with my students as they start on their exploration and into the world of being a school tourist. One of the places we visited in New York was the East Side Institute, which has been doing a lot of work internationally in bringing performance and play into people's lives, both as therapy and as learning. And Alys pointed out to me that they were hosting a conference in 2018 and that we should go back to New York and present at that conference. I think at that point, I sort of flippantly said, well, if it's performing the world, we should perform something. And Alys and I started talking, and we decided to write a play with my students to perform at Performing the World, documenting our experience. And it was putting that, Alys, I don't know if you were in the UK or Australia then, but she was halfway around the world. We were here. Some of my students had graduated. So remotely and together, we made this play and did perform it. And the experience of performance as a reflective process just struck out to me. And I've done I'm trying to do more work in that in my classes with how to getting to write scripts and perform them as a way of reflecting on experience. Fictionalized versions of what they just experienced is really exciting to me. I do want to read one piece that Alys wrote in that play when she and I are having a fictionalized conversation of our experience. And she writes, "When we visit schools, we need to be aware of our privilege. We are white, able-bodied, and able to afford to study, work at university, and to spend a week." What happens when I don't turn off my phone? Spend a week in New York. When we walk into these schools each day, we need to hold an awareness of this. We too are part of the performance. We wear our privileges as we visit schools, and in turn, the schools perform to us and share what they want us to see. There are many unspoken themes, topics, and judgments left hanging in the air. We had one challenge with patriarchy and what I know we discussed later as a white savior concept. What responsibility do we have, not only visiting schools, but in sharing the stories from these places we visit? How do we tell these stories? What language do we use? So it really opened up my mind when we started talking about our school visits as a performance from both sides. They're performing for us, we're performing, we're interacting through performance, and then replicating the tidbits of the performances as we reflect and what they meant to us in our thinking, and how the students ended up having a very equal or even dominant role in the creation of that script was really amazing. I also want to comment on Alys's continued referral to privilege throughout this book. I really commend her for reflecting on her own privilege and the privilege of those around her, who gets to even have the privilege of choosing their school. Whether you win a lottery in a charter or a free school, or whether you can afford to your family, there's privilege in many different levels. And I certainly feel very privileged to have worked with Alys in this journey and be part of it, even just for a moment of it. I want to end on, I also, as Tami talked about, the opening the door to performative ethnography. I had a capstone student recently who was talking about experiences. This is an undergrad student, we're undergrad only, but our students do capstone presentations. And she took on a performative aspect to her capstone presentation. And she had interviewed people about their own lived school experiences. And as she, in true Alys form, as she was becoming one of the people she interviewed, she had a prop that represented that person and became their voices. And it was just a beautiful way of having a student represent their inquiry into the lives that people experience in schools. So I just think it's an amazing book, and I know I'm going to be using it for years with my students.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's wonderful. Yes, it was wonderful to work with your student and see that the power of the ripple effect of giving people the confidence to do things differently, not just in how they visit school, but in how they present their work. So that was a very exciting experience. What I'm going to do, because I know that Jane's not here, Jane wanted to share an image which was at the very beginning of the book. I'll do a screen share. I think that's probably the easiest way, and show you it. Here we are. This is the image. It's a lino cut that I did when Ginny's still quite little in that one. Ginny was a baby. And for Jane, in what she was saying, this image was really important to her because it's got Ginny in it. And she was a twinkle of my eye, she said, when I was doing this research. It was very true at the beginning of the project, but actually she was very present when I was writing this into a book. But that strong image of the whole family then reminded Jane of the impact of school on her family. So there's that link between reading stories and then the impact back onto the personal. And that to me is one of the powers of autoethnographic work, about this mixture of the personal critiqued in culture, but also linking back to Tami's work on the power of the ripple effect and the performativity of hope. We don't know where this is going. When we share, we're not sure how it's going to impact people. And it's not necessarily going to be always positive. You might read something and it might trigger some deep-seated pain. We don't know that, but it also might be part of this shift for change. So yeah, I thought it was really beautiful to share that, of Jane's idea to share that image. And we're very sorry Jane's not here, but at least we're able to share the presence of Jane within the space. So maybe we should move on to, if hand back to Tatiana, maybe to just host the next bit, into questions and discussion. Thank you.
Yes, we were thinking to open up the space to questions, comments. If any one of you has had an experience of reading the book or parts of the book, or if you are curious about anything, any of the comments. I think Lisbeth, she was waving to say goodbye, probably. So you just wave or have your hand like reaction, it's in the bottom, or just wave if you want to have a comment. Davina.
I just I wanted to thank Alys for all the images that that made it into the book, because I think they're really important in terms of that kind of movement between the personal and that aspect of kind of journeying and bringing a life story forward through that journey of visiting schools and looking at schools and I mean, I'm particularly drawn to the images because Alys and I worked on getting them right together in terms of the for printing and stuff. Yeah, the lino cuts are fantastic, Alys, and it's really nice to see your skill in that grow since over the years that we've known each other. Because you were terribly tentative when you first started, and now you just really go for it. So. I think they really add another dimension to the writing, I think, and I'm all for getting more pictures into academic books. So. As a visual artist, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, thank you, Davina. It is such a big difference. If you look through, if I can spin the book that way, you can see the images. Now it is full of images. I think there's 73 images all the way through. And when I submitted my PhD, I had no images. And I find that interesting. And when I think at that point of time, I just wanted to write and submit. I'd done this journal, I wanted to write it, and I was submitting it. And I think in myself, I didn't have the confidence to see and to pitch myself as an art space educator as well as somebody who was writing within performative autoethnography. I hadn't got the confidence to do that. And suddenly when I was writing this book, and Brill were an amazing publisher to work with, because they wanted images and they wanted color images. And that was what was so exciting, because other publishers are all very much about black and white. They wanted color images, and they said, yeah, it'll be a bigger book and it'll cost more, but you'll have it there. And a lot of people read online on the PDFs now. So it's true that it's not actually as expensive for them. Why not have these images? And I agree. I suddenly realized that I could add so much more to my work by sharing. Yes, you can look inside my van with me now, or you can feel what it looks like when I looked at the school. And you can actually begin to make your own comparisons. I mean, I know I'm arguing that being the nomadology is not, it's not, you can't stay in one place. You have to, it is the literal act of traveling, the journey. You have to physically go into these schools. You have to feel them, to the emotional aspect. But I wrote this before COVID hit us and we weren't going into schools. So there is a different world that we're slightly living in now, even though I still argue that it is that human space. But at least by in the book, having images in the book, I'm giving you an invitation. And I think that's something through the work with Davina and through the collaborative arts-based inquiry that work I've done with Jane and Davina and others really gave me that confidence for the role in research and in the academy. So thank you, Davina. And also this book isn't just for academics. It's for anyone to read. As people have said, if it feels like a novel, it's meant to feel like a novel with some nice images that you can really enjoy. Yeah.
If I can extend Davina's comment, I appreciated pictures, visuals, all of them very much, because you allow us to take the journey together with you, and introduce us to these different places through your eyes, and introduce us into your life. And it's a very generous act, and together with the courage you show us to travel, inquire, and put also yourself into question, and question your own professional background, like the Steiner education that you trained into, and constantly cultivate this critical dialogue with yourself, and with methodologies and with theories. That's a very courageous way of working. So that's two things that I want to share.
Hi, Alice. I was just going to say that I really enjoyed your educational journey in terms of the years, because I've seen you for snippets over the years. So I kind of, when you were doing your regular teacher training, you know, I heard how that was going. And then when you moved to Steiner, and it was really interesting all those years ago. And I think for me, this filled in a lot of the blanks as to every time I'd seen you, something had moved on. And this was just such a personal account of why, you know, why those forks in the road happened and where they went. And I suppose my question is, and you might not be able to answer this, what does Ginny's education look like? Is she going to be a nomad trying out lots of different educational settings, knowing that none of them can ever be perfect, but she's going to get something from each of them? Or are you going to take those gems and try and create something yourself? And you might not have an answer.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's so interesting to think about. I was talking about the possibility of future parents, and Alice, the future parent, and then the reality of then being a parent in that space. At the moment, we're planning that she won't go to school. That's actually our plan. The plan is that we plan to a sort of unschooling approach, following interests. But it's also fascinating to watch her as a person. She loves books. She is constantly wanting to be read to, but also she just sits and enjoys looking at books for a long, long time on her own. It's a thing she absolutely adores. So that's interesting, because that, if you were following the sort of hardcore Steiner approach, in the 3-year-olds, it would just be play. She plays so much, and we have open-ended toys. I'm very much into open-ended resources, but it's also interesting that books are very important for us. So then I have to make sure that I really question we're reading. So I try to find inclusive stories that are diverse, that cover all sorts of peoples and different identities and aspects to what I'm sharing with her. And I change stories when I read them. I make sure I talk about women. I make sure that I often use they. I make sure that I'm giving her the opportunity to be in this space as inclusively and diverse and relating to, when we're only living in rural Australia at the moment, we hope to be moving back to the UK, but what will that bring us? It's even hard having a small child because I don't like the local playgroups. So I have started my own playgroup, which is an outdoor Steinery inspired playgroup, because there isn't anything that I want us to go to. So it is tricky. The more you learn, the harder it is then to relate to society. I'm asking for the societal change, but then I have to find the people. So you've got to dig deep and it's more work, but it's worth it because I want to give her the chances. And obviously we've also got to watch her, but we also don't want to we want to learn from our experiences as well. Yeah, great question. And it's going to be an ongoing, I think that's probably the next journey. Ginny and I have already started publishing together. We did an art journaling of our itinerant lives last year and made a film, and it's in children's geographies at the moment, waiting to get published with both our names. So yeah, it'll probably be a co-written book with Boz as well, maybe 3 of us.
Well, and she comes to our research meetings, doesn't she, Alys?
Yeah, she's in the Bodies Club. Yeah. So I saw Jude, Daniel's got the hand up.
Yeah, though Emma really put me to the post on the same question. So all I will do is comment that I started reading your book as a friend who was, an observer to the journey, or parts of, and kind of wanted to see what had been going on and sort of fill in the blanks. And found myself much more than I thought I would reading it as a mum, as a new mum, and really kind of thinking about education and how that whole thing all works, really pretty much for the first time. And so I suppose I sort of wanted to share that, really that sort of reading of it as a novel, but also just as almost like a dummy's guide to what is Steiner, what is Montessori, what is unschooling, because I had heard of all these words and I'd actually Googled all of them quite hard and still had literally no idea what any of them meant. At the moment, my life has a lot of like, oh, are you going to the Montessori nursery or the other nursery in it? That is sort of that level of chat. And I was just like, does anyone know what this stuff actually is? And there was something in the way you tell the story through your experience of it and your reaction to it that made me understand. I mean, I don't know if my understanding is right, but it gave me an understanding that is much, much deeper than I've got from anything else I've read on the topic. So there's something in that sort of that personality that comes through of making it just so much more relatable to a completely unexperienced reader.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you very much. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping that this book can relate and respond to so many different people. Tami, you had your hand up just before. Sorry, I saw. You're on mute.
I was clapping to hear that you and your child are publishing together. That's all.
And also, you see in the book, she's already the published artist.
Yeah. She likes to look at that page. She actually looks through the book and she sees pictures of Meme and her picture. Yes.
Hello, Alys. I was thinking I will be a listener today because I haven't read your book, but I have a daughter and she's studying at a Sterner school, and that's why I think that's one reason why we moved to the UK. So from China, moved to UK. So And also for my research subject, I always thinking about the distance from words and form, or it's a image as well. So it's somehow something is beyond our language, something we cannot describe with language, with words. And also from my daughter's education journey, I really can say that why Center Education, they really, so they focus on children's living rhythm and how the rhythm can match match the nature and the seasons changes and also cultures, something like that. So it's really remind me to rethink the way how we get in touch with our inner world and outward. If we just knowing things or understanding things from books or from language, I'm not sure it's enough for us to be or to become a whole person, a whole being, something like that. So from the people we're meeting here, and I'm a listener, and also I learned what we are doing together now. It's not just about we'll produce some new knowledge. We're going to fill a gap, a knowledge gap. It's not just the task for researchers. So I think I'm really touched when you said that this book is not only for scholars, it's also for parents, for anyone else might interested in education, yeah, and arts and creative approaches. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's it. That's why I'm really arguing my performing school tourism idea is to get people to go and visit different schools. Even if you want your child to go to the local school, there's normally 2 local schools, or your child can still go to the local school, but you can experience other things you can bring into the local school, depending on where you live. So there's often ways that you can learn new things to bring things into where you are, even if you drive a bit further. Or for other people, it might be on a bigger scale, like you did, move. Some people do move. So, I mean, that's back to what Michael was saying about different choices that we have in our lives. And there's different privileges. But yes, and the other thing about all this work, at the end of the book, I'm moving into the Earth-We, where I'm looking at a bigger shift in consciousness. It's not just that personal journey, it's this Earth-We. It's bigger than me, it's bigger than all these different types of schools, it's bigger than the details, it's this bigger paradigm shift. And often you can't give words to that. I'm arguing into that post-human space where we don't, and the more than human space, we cannot give words to that experience of shift and change. So thank you. I think that brought lots of things together. I saw that Sue's got your hand up. Hello, Sue.
Hi. My hand down in a sec. So I know in your book you're very aware of your privilege, and I know that's been referenced in some of the talk, the introduction and things about sort of your awareness there, and I think that's really good in the book. You mentioned that. I work in North Manchester, which has got really high levels of deprivation in areas, and I don't work directly with children, but I work with families and I see what they're up against. And I was just wondering, how do you hope that the book could help people and kids who are living in those areas? Essentially, how do you think it could help the kids of Newton Heath? And is there what's your hopes with regards to that?
Well, I've actually been working quite a lot with pre-service teachers online in the last few years in Australia. And I hope that by me being in those spaces and through this book, reading about doing things differently, then in their classrooms, they will be able to bring some of these changes into their everyday practice. A lot of the schools I visited were places that were trying to bring innovation into the public school, state school system. And I'm thinking that if there's some ways that teachers, even if it's working with new teachers, they can think differently, then there might be possibilities for change. And that's why I developed the GEMS idea, that there are these glimmers of hope within the system. Yes, it might be in this neoliberal system that's so much pressure on exams, but can you change the environment that you're working in? Can you give more student voice? Can you have more respect for the students in that space? Can they go outside more? Are there ways that you can work differently even within a tight remit? And I think that's my hope. Work that Michael is doing with his students of actually offering a course for thinking differently. It might not be directly with the students themselves, but it might be with the adults in the schools that they're attending. And it would be amazing if this course that Michael runs, this book, was in more pre-service teacher trainings around the world for people to think differently, to go in, because I think if you go to one school, or say 2 or 3 schools as yourself, then train to be a teacher, you've only had experience of about 5 places, and maybe less. For me, it was 3, because I went to, two, primary school, secondary school, and then straight in before I'd actually begun to look at other places. So if people can visit more places, then they get the possibility of thinking differently. And I think that's it. The more experiences, you can think differently. So yeah, that would be my ripple effect for those people, and hopefully that will bring change. Great question. Thank you. Have we got one more question before we head towards finishing up?
Alys, can you tell us probably about your plans for the future? I mean, how do you plan on sending your book and the ideas in your book out in the world, and continue the ripple effect of your ideas?
That's what I've been sitting with. I've been trying to work that out, and I think that it's also I'm set. When I wrote this book, it was just me, and then just me and Boz in a van traveling around. Well, I wrote the PhD, and then writing the book, I had a baby, and that was different again. I suddenly had to create these times to write, to rewrite, to think differently, and it's a very different game. So now I've got to work out ways to live my life where I want to be present for Ginny, but also share these ideas. Now, during the pandemic has meant that everything has moved online, and actually for a new parent, that has been absolutely amazing, because it's meant that I can connect with people around the world. I'm missing the hugs that I can give, and people like my friends and family in the UK, I haven't been able to see them for a long time now, but I think that maybe I want to do more research. I love research. It's been fun to teach online, but I have to do marking. And I've written a book saying I don't believe in the system. So the hours I spent with rubrics does not make any sense. So I actually would love to be spending my time with people making change. I think that maybe if I could find some funding to run more, to get more people involved in change. So maybe, as Sue was saying, something intervention for teacher training. Maybe there is something that we can offer for change, for get more Michael's trips, going and visiting more schools with students. But I think there's something also about student voice and giving them the autonomy for change. If we go in and just tell them, we're not making some change. So that's bringing back to the performative. And I think that's also a really, for me, something that's really came out of this work, that the performative work, the Performative-Autoethnographic-We, is so strong that if we can work with that further, can we get those students' voices and experiences of visiting and thinking differently, then change can happen. It's definitely not going and starting a school, because I'm saying you can't start an ideal school. I'm arguing that school as we know it isn't the answer. That's not where my time is. People are doing that, and it's amazing. Those people working for change in small scale places. But I think my role is much more in the conceptual level and the bodied way of getting people to think differently. I'd love for people to collaborate and to work with me and think of ways of getting funding as well. Funding's the trick. Do you have any ideas, Tatiana?
Oh, many. No money, but many ideas.
I like that. I think of myself as a voluntary scholar these days. That's how I do all my research, but I love it. Well, I thought I would just read us just a very short section, and then if we on page here we are on page 49 and 50. It's the end of a little poem about school. And then if we've got any final comments, we can sum up with those ones. So this is a poem called School is Not the Answer. For it is an entanglement of education, a radical non-binary approach that draws on the current strengths, the gems, but dreams for the future, for the visions of the not yet fought, made possible by giving young people the freedom to fly, and to de-school teachers and to de-school the system, and chuck out not just the word school, but the institution itself. For there is no ideal school. A school is not the answer. Thank you. So thank you very much for Tami coming, and to Michael and to Tatiana and to Jane, who would have been with us today. And thank you very much to everyone else who came along. I really appreciated the questions and the thoughts. And I would love it if you'd like to, Michael, no, who we've got, Paul's added something here. He's just saying, thanks for the ideas back to 2015 and ongoing, all the talks we've had. And I was a visiting scholar at Paul's school, and it was just a wonderful experience for me, really boosted my confidence to go to a school as a visiting scholar, to a place that was actually valued my journeys and the sharing, and so much learning from what was going on at that institution. That's in Lausanne. Yes, so to thank you for everyone for being here. Let's carry on this dialogue. I will put in the my email, and also if you haven't bought the book already but would like to, there is a discount code that Brill has sent us to share with you all. I will put that in the here we are. Here is the link to the book and a discount code from Brill. It's 7225. People are interested.
Alys, I just wanted to say one more thing. We're talking about your journey and your experience, and the reason it works is because you're constantly holding yourself accountable to your own creative work and your own critical thinking. You're always holding yourself accountable to your own ideas. And that's what keeps us moving forward. And it's what keeps us, it's what invites us into our own thinking about it. It's done so well in the book. It's beautifully done. It's a very good example of what good critical autoethnography can do. It's an invitation to think critically about our own lives. And that's what I enjoyed most. And I so thank you for the contribution.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. And good night, good day, good morning. And thank you very much. And let's carry on this dialogue. Please do continue with me. Thank you very much. And goodbye.
Thank you, Alys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.